Ring ring ring, hello, peasants
What?
and incels, and welcome back to Krown's magical but also extremely serious magic internet money cave.
Yes, welcome back to the Krown Crypto channel. Wishing you a happy new start to this nice Thursday morning over here as we prepare for perhaps the big move. The big move of which there is another little notch within the belt of the higher term timeframes that we've been following up on for the past couple weeks here, actually the past month here essentially now. And I wanted to essentially speak about what the next major thing to be expected is. Of course, going over the lower term timeframes as well. Last 24 hours been more or less uneventful, very much sideways, but I do suspect that this is brewing up for a big resolution between now and 5 days from now. So that would be putting us basically between now and Thanksgiving. So with that said, let's just jump right into it right now and start it off with the 5-day time frame. So we were looking at this time frame, we have been looking at this time frame for months now basically, but yesterday we were looking at it as potentially about to confirm a cross to the downside. Why is that actually relevant? Well, this is a volatility versus stochastic momentum signature over here, and volatility is going to be represented by this particular indicator, the BBWP, and anytime that it has gotten down to extreme lows, fully contracted below 15 percentile is how I define that. Well, over the past 4 to 5 years now, that's led to an average move afterwards of about 42.35% over the course of the next 37 days. And we do have a first standard deviation based off of the prior results in the past 5 years between 35.25% all the way up to about 49.5%. So that gives us areas of interest upon validation of this signal, of which, do we have a validation? Well, I suspect yes, with the last closure last night, we do see that 5-day BBWP is now above the 15 percentile marker. So we have expansion of volatility plus the direction of the 5-day stochastic oscillator is now crossing to the downside and will be remaining to the downside as long as Bitcoin is closing the next 5-day time frame. So that would be on the 22nd. Apologies here. Anywhere below 17,700 on spot price action, not CME, but spot price action right here. So that is to say, as long as Bitcoin is below that pivot, bears are still in control. I would even go as far to say that as long as Bitcoin is either below the $18,000 marker on a weekly closing basis or 18,500 on a daily closing basis, yes, bears are in control on the higher term timeframes. Of course, that doesn't mean on the lower term timeframes that you're going to see your rallies here and there. Obviously, we'll go over that a little bit later. But on the higher term timeframes, yes, that's kind of where I have the line in the sand for myself. And in this case, the 5-day stochastic oscillator has actually been correct in getting the direction of the volatility expansion direction. Actually, it's been perfect in the past 5 years now. Doesn't mean it's always going to be like that, obviously. I mean, we do expect this to fail at some point. But, well, as long as it is to the downside, I would still say that risk remains to the downside. And we can look at these stats over here as, well, giving us some areas of interest. So keep in mind that we will, on average, look for this move to play out, in the next 37 days. Now, technically speaking, the signal was really born on the last major high at about a little bit above $21,000. So we've already seen about, let me just measure it out over here. We've already seen about 10 days to 15 days of this, 15 days of this transpire. So we probably expect this to be going into about the middle point, maybe even the end point of December. So ultimately, as long as these conditions are met, I still look at the downside as more relevant here. So let's now take these measurements and see what those areas of interest to the downside would be. Obviously, we've already seen a pretty hefty move to the downside. That was forecasted by the 2-day time frame, of which we'll briefly go over in a second. But for right now, if we were to go over this particular time frame, well, 35%, which would be the lower end of the first standard deviation, would put you at, or not you, but Bitcoin in the mid $13,000 territory. So anywhere between about $13,500 to $13,000 even would be kind of the next major area of interest upon continuation. Very specific key right there. We'll talk about what sort of price action would be needed to indicate continuation is relevant, now rather than just relevant, maybe as a potential later. Now, of course, if we go for the full average, which is about 42%, that would put Bitcoin at about around 12,000 to 11,500 bucks, and for 49.5%, that would put Bitcoin at just below 11,000 bucks, which also is confluent with the 2-day time frame signal that we've been looking at as well here. So again, that is essentially the areas of interest upon downside continuation coming into basically mid to end of December, and until Bitcoin again crosses back above this level specifically right here, 17,700. I look at that as more relevant because we are starting to witness volatility expansion. To follow up on the 2-day time frame, which is actually going to be closing tonight, I won't go over the full signal here, but you can see that a lot of the same areas of interest are, relevant on this particular chart. I should denote, however, that this is CME futures, not spot price action, so there's slightly different prices here, as there is about a $300 discount between spot and CME right now. But ultimately, the pivot, as it is going to be 20,000 bucks. So as long as Bitcoin is closing tonight below 20,000 bucks, which looks, dare I say, rather likely, again, risk remains to the downside. So keep that in mind. And let's now move into the shorter term timeframes, of which I'll go in over here. So shorter term timeframes, what's our range highs, what's our range lows? It's basically the same thing as before. And what is the range highs? 16,950 to the upside versus the range lows, which would be essentially 15,400 to the downside. Now, we did say yesterday that any sort of a closure below about the 16,000 or so region would start to confirm this as a local high, thus a lower high, thus confirming hidden bearish divergence between this point over here and this point over here, as there is higher highs on RSI alongside lower highs on price action. Well, that looks like it is holding to fruition. So I'm looking at this as, likely to trade back down to the bottom side of the range. Probably there's going to be stops along the way, of course, but we are starting to see that 4-hour BBWP is reversing from a contraction phase, now looking for potential expansion between today, Thursday, and tomorrow, Friday. So if this is going to play out, I do expect it to happen within the next 48 hours, probably very likely on Friday, maybe today, Thursday, but Friday is typically the day for moves. Anyways, in this case, the contractive phase on 4-hour BBWP was giving us a bias at the current move was a corrective move, and corrective within the current context of the trend is a short-term time frame bounce, and that's what we've gotten. It bounced into a lower high, so I don't really have anything to change right there. But let's talk about range resolutions for a second, and then actually before we talk about range resolutions, let's talk about lower term time frame stochastic momentum, and then we'll talk about range resolutions. So in this case, stochastic momentum on the daily remains to the downside with any sort of a closure below 17,000 bucks. Again, it's not like unheard of to see a $500 to $800 rally before end of day. But as of right now, Bitcoin is well below 17,000 bucks, obviously. If we go to the 12-hour time frame, the 12-hour pivot is currently at 15,720. Again, this is on CME, so there is a bit of a discount here on price action. 6-hour time frame is going to be showing downside pressure below 16,200, which CME is trading very close to as of right now. By the way, this one closes in the next hour and 20 minutes, so definitely keep an eye on that. 4-hour time frame is going to be showing downside pressure as long as Bitcoin's below 16,430, which currently obviously it is. And then the hourly is going to be showing downside as long as Bitcoin's below 16,280, which again, it is about 60 to 70 bucks below as of right now. So keep that in mind as the lower term timeframes and the medium term timeframes and the higher term timeframes start to all align with each other. That is usually what I look for ultimately. But let's quickly talk about short term timeframe range resolutions, because as always, random shit does happen, obviously. And in this case, what essentially would be an indication to me that Bitcoin is not necessarily super bearish from the short term timeframes, and is very likely to pop back up, maybe even tagging around 18,000 bucks. Well, I need to see either a 4-hour closure above about 19,000. Apologies, dyslexia speaking right there. What I mean to say is 16,950 or an hourly above about 17,200 or so. If one of those two sets of criteria happens, then I do look for a move, very likely back onto the range highs here, the 0.5 to the 618. That's kind of my line in the sand for the higher term timeframes. Again, 18,000 bucks on a weekly closure, which tomorrow is Friday, and then a daily above 18,500. If that happens, bear is no longer in control. Lower term timeframes start to bleed into higher term timeframes, and we start to look at this as very likely to move back up towards 20,000 and probably beyond for a bit. And we can just look at this all as a figment of our imaginations. No problem at all whatsoever. I can just take this red girthy dildo out of my asshole and no problem, baby, unplug that hole. Thank you for that, Elsa. Anyways, before I was so rudely interrupted. A resolution to the downside, however, would very likely propel not just the lower term timeframes, but also bleed into the higher term timeframes, bringing into the view both the 2-day timeframe signal and the 5-day timeframe signal would be a 4-hour timeframe closure below the range lows here at 15,375 or 15,400 if you just round up. Again, specifically for CME, if you see that, then very likely we do get the next move to the downside. And those areas of interest that we spoke about earlier, between about 13.5 to 13, and then, well, so on and so forth, become relevant. Again, there's going to be very likely short-term time frame stops along the way, but ultimately, I still don't really look for things to happen until Bitcoin actually closes below there. And realistically, I'd really want to see a higher-term time frame close below there, as you know, we are kind of, we'd be talking about a pretty damn big move over here. So I do think that it'd be better to err on the side of caution, just personally. Although this is not financial advice, I'm not a financial advisor. This is just the way that I'm looking at price action as it is right now, for better or worse. Anyways, other than that, I think that's a good place to kind of leave off on this particular video. We're about 11 minutes in. Anything else that I want to say? Yes. It's almost Black Friday, so I want to warn you. Don't buy any products. Don't buy any programs on our app. Just wait a week, and it'll be about 20% cheaper. Maybe. No, it'll be 20% off for Black Friday. So just want to make sure that everyone has full information there, so you don't FOMO in. There is never any need to FOMO in, of course. And make sure to watch the videos so that you actually know what you're getting yourself into and can make the proper decision for yourself, as you are more capable of doing that than I am for you. All right, sweet. I think that's a good place to be leaving it off. I want to once again wish you the best as always. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully soon.